Hello and welcome back to JLXP. Today we have an episode to talk about Senna. And the best person to talk about Senna is actually Senna's champion designer, who I have here, August, who now is known as Riot August. You've switched your name since past days.
Yes, my former name was not very appropriate. I wasn't aware growing up in an isolated town in Alaska, so
Sure.
I got rid of it and picked something more appropriate, which is my actual name.
It's your actual
August.
name. This
Yeah.
is the Josh Leesman experience, even though my name is Jatt. So I can relate with kind of half changing your name going through. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, August has been the champion designer on Vi, Jinx, Gnar, Echo, Jhin, Senna, did the Kayle and Morgana update, did one of the Rengar reverts, and is currently finishing up one of the Wukong updates, one of the designers. But we're definitely talking about Senna today. And it's actually really cool that I have you on this podcast because we can go like way back in the day.
Way back.
You started Riot in 2012, I think.
Right after you, I think.
Yeah, it was like March or April of 2012. I started in February.
This was like back during like Scumbag Jatt was still like the meme.
Yeah, when I first joined Riot, actually, it was like it was soon after peak Scumbag Jatt where I'd left pro, and people didn't even know I joined Riot until like 4 months later because I didn't know how to handle the meme at the time before just like leaning into it. But like, yeah, you and I were actually roommates for like 2 years.
We were roommates for a while. You were QA before you started on. Started casting.
Yeah, I started showcasting.
I remember you helped balance Vi a bit. And you told me. I remember during testing, Joshua Jatt Leesman, famous jungler, told me that Vi would never jungle. Actually,
I still don't remember that. I know you told me that story multiple times.
Yeah.
Maybe Vi in her current state could never jungle, and then you changed something.
Maybe I buffed it. Yeah. Supposedly the kit I had made had felt so bad to interact with jungle monsters that Jatt just.
Did you change anything because of that feedback, or no? Do you remember that far
after
back?
ship, I made the E feel a lot better to use against monsters.
Nice. Yeah. And then still, I actually don't play Vi that much, even though it's fun. One champion I did play a lot of, though, is Senna on release. And also, in my brief jump back into game design, back in January of 2019, there was like one of the ways that champions get balanced before they release is like there's the champion designer, but then there was also like a balance consult from the live team. Then there was also like a lead playtester. And then, as you've mentioned, there's a bunch of other people that still work on the champion, like engineers and artists and narrative and like just this big group of people. Do you want to just talk about that a little bit?
I mean, yeah, there's not a lot to say. Well, there is a lot to say in that, like, there's just a lot of people always think it's like, oh, you're the champion designer. Wow, you made this. And, like, the thing to remember is that I would argue that, yes, I made this, but, yes, all these other people also made this.
I made this. We made this.
Yeah, I made this. We made this. Exactly.
Yeah.
You made this.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Very little.
And so, yeah, there's huge teams that go into creating champions. VFX artists, animators, particle, that's a VFX artist. VFX artists, animators, concept artists, modelers, riggers, tech artists, playtest team, live team, champion design, production, promo. There's
just
so
tons
much.
of stuff.
There's so much.
But it is cool when you get to be the champion designer of Senna as well.
Yeah, because I get to say what the spells are. That's the most fun part in my opinion.
Yeah. So I was the balance consult assigned to Senna early on. So I got to see really like raw Senna. Like what was like the temp character you used for Senna? Or she actually had a model pretty
She had
early
a
on.
model very early, which really helped because from very early on she had that big gun passive.
Yeah.
And so it really helped that she had a model with a giant gun. Although originally when she was running around, it looked like she was holding a giant bat. Like she looked kind of like Echo with like kind of like a comically oversized bat that she walked around with.
Yeah. Some of the early playtests on her, it was like, I remember you and I got into a few like productive discussions about like the balance of the R, because I think at one point it did like 600 damage, shielded for 800 or something.
Yeah. By the way, the discussions weren't productive because I didn't listen to you. She was clearly overpowered, and I should have paid more attention. But we got her there. I remember she used to have her passive used to give her crit damage as well. And you were worried about that for rightful reason, and it took me a while to take that off. But she used to be able to get like 300% crit damage by the end of the game. It was
I mean, one of the challenges that we talked about early on is like, hey, we've never really had something that can be a support and an AD carry. Support primary, but should be able to perform in both positions and also feel like a marksman as a support. So it's like, here's this game that's existed for 10 years, and this champion needs to uniquely do this thing that no other champion necessarily fits into. Like, how did you necessarily approach that problem?
Well, so it's a hard problem.
Yeah.
One of the easiest ways to approach it would have actually to been, I think, say, well, she's just not going to be an AD carry. She's going to be a support marksman. She'll be a support. She'll auto attack. But if you want to play her as a carry,
what would have that looked like? Why would have that been easier?
I think it would have been easier because we could have restricted pretty significantly like what she could build and what she could scale with. So like
the Pike approach.
Yeah, the Pike.
Even though he still managed to be like a jungler,
insane mid,
solo
yes,
laner.
Exactly. So, but it would be like, here's an example of something that could work. It's probably bad because I didn't go this route, but it's she only can build AP, so she can't build like crit and pen and stuff. And then we give her some like weak AP ratios in her attacks. So like, there's always just some amount of damage she's going to do with her attacks, but like she's not going to be murking you like a Infinity Edge 2 lethality item Senna might.
Yeah. Manamune Senna.
Manamune. Oh yeah, we didn't catch that one.
Yeah.
We didn't think she would build it because she attacks so slow, but it turns out her Q and her W apply it. So.
Yeah, it's like a double proc too on auto, I think.
It doesn't double proc.
Okay, Black Cleaver double procs, Manamune does not.
Black Cleaver does, yes. But yeah. So that was that could have made it easier, but I'm greedy and I want her to be played by everybody.
Yeah.
I've been at fault for things like this in the past. Let's say Tank Echo. Tank Echo was a result of my opinion that like if we can make a champion open to the item system, we should try.
Yeah, I think so. And then it's just a matter of finding the right balance down the line, and sometimes it's more difficult. Like to me, one of the things that makes Senna like your solution for the support AD carry swap is, hey, let's give this marksman AD carry a way of scaling that isn't CS, which is the soul system.
Yeah, the soul system. So that's exactly it. And like that was like the big way we solve, like one of the big ways to solve it was like, okay, so your marksman AD carry, we want people to be able to put in support primary and bot secondary and just lock Senna no matter what role they get. And that should be like sweet and cool and exciting. So the soul system is the idea of like basically compressing the gap between the two roles. It's saying as a support, you're getting less gold from CSing, so we need to give you gold somewhere else so that you still feel like you have close to a carry level output. And of course, one of Senna's weaknesses as a quote carry is that she does less DPS than the typical marksman. So it's like, she's fighting, say, a really fed Tahm Kench, although I have no idea how a Tahm Kench could ever get fed. But if she was fighting one, she wouldn't be able to kill it.
Senna struggles a lot against like super fed tanks, and you need like DPS somewhere else in the composition, which a lot of times would come from the AD carry, but then when you have a Senna AD carry, it's like if you don't have a Kale or a Kled or something
Vladimir
else,
or something,
DPS, Aatrox, things like this.
Yeah, then you need something to make up for it. But of course, she's really great at supporting whoever that DPS is who you bring. Yeah, because she'll just heal them up.
Yeah, we'll get into some of the like more theory crafted Senna pairings in a bit and talk a little bit about Senna in Pro more towards the end of the episode. But something that I think is really cool to talk about is some of the things Senna was along the way, or how she ended up like this.
Yeah. So Senna actually, so she started with a very, very important goal. In that Senna was, she was going to be a few firsts for League that were very important. One is she was going to be our first support marksman. So that meant like she had to feel like a marksman as a support. She was also going to be our first black woman, and she was Lucian's wife.
Yeah.
And the reason those two are important is if you're Lucian's wife, you're not some demure support sitting there in the back line, just helping out, being nice and friendly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but like that's not what Senna was.
This thing, yeah.
Yeah, like Senna was Lucian's wife. She fought beside him, right?
Yeah.
We had this like just kind of idea in the during the development that like some cool moment between Senna and Lucian is like freaking like Senna like blasts a Wraith and then Lucian like runs up the gun and jumps off of it and like shoots some Wraiths and then she like blasts the ult through him. Right? Like, and there's just like cool moments like that, and we wanted that to really play out. So it felt really important that from day one that Senna could feel like a carry, could feel like she wasn't just in the backline helping, but also she was dishing out damage. She was a threat. She was important.
Yeah, and I mean, so what was the first spell you were set on? Was it the Q? I mean, there was an iteration where the auto attacks healed, and you could like shoot your friend. Like that was really early on. That fast filled pretty quick.
So actually, it's funny in that the first spell that was set was actually the W, which is like actually probably the least definitional and least interesting spell in her kit. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad.
Yeah.
But I kind of put it on as a throwaway spell from almost day one on like most of the kits I had.
This delayed route, and it had like toned down Leona VFX for the Leona R. So it hit you, and then when it rooted, it was like this thing that came down from the sky.
Yeah, and you'd all get rooted.
Yeah.
And just from day one, like I put it on because it's like, so in champion development, a lot of times you'll be testing mechanics. So for Senna, I always be like, one day I'd be like, I want to see what happens if her auto attacks heal.
Yeah.
Right? And so you'll throw on like, quote, throwaway spells just so your kit has like something to do.
Yeah.
So that you can really like focus on the mechanics you care about, like say auto attacking people to heal them. But so that was what the W was originally. I was just like, well, what if she had a root, but it was delayed, so it's not as OP as Morgana and Lux because she's a marksman, so it's probably important that you jump on her and kill her. So I just put that on her as a throwaway, and from day one, it actually just got really generally good feedback. People were like, this is good gameplay, it's good counterplay. One of the things that people actually really liked is that Senna would call targets with it. She'd be like, I'm going to hit that guy, and then like the person she'd be playing with would be like, whoa, that guy's going to get rooted in a second. I'm going to like run in and like try to kill them. Whereas like, compare that to say like Lux Q. Sometimes like when you hit a Lux Q, by the time your marksman, especially if you're in gold, realizes that the Q landed, it's already expired.
Yeah.
Whereas like Senna's was more call to action. So that was actually her first spell that like, just honestly, it's been on all the kits I did, even like the really crazy weird ones. Like there was one kit for a while where every spell she cast caused her to teleport somewhere. She did not have
that version.
She did not have a big gun back then. This was an idea that she had dual pistols, just like her husband. So just like Lucian, she had 2 light slinging pistols, and the idea was that she would cast spell and teleport, cast spell and teleport.
Oh.
And it was really fun.
Yeah.
And I thought it was sweet. But the issue was that she didn't feel like a marksman. She felt like a mage because she spent a lot of time not attacking and a lot of time just casting spells so that she could teleport around.
Yeah. One thing that I've liked about playing Senna, and I don't know if this is necessarily something you were going for, but because the attack speed is so low and just like frozen at low because you wanted the big gun to feel really meaningful, I don't need high level like marksman mechanics to play Senna well, which is like one of the only characters I can actually play in the bot lane carry role without feeling like I suck.
Have you tried Jhin?
Actually, Jhin is like the mage of AD carries. Like, Jhin would work, I just haven't put the time into him.
Yeah. Well, actually, so that's actually the reason I bring up Jhin here is like, one of the reasons that I was confident to like try this passive on Senna that with these big slow attacks is that Jhin was a guy that we originally experimented with in terms of like slow attacking. And it's like, what if you took a marksman pattern but you slowed it down? Do people still want that? Yeah. We actually thought that when we were making Jhin, he'd be really niche. Like only a few people would want to play him. He'd be like a less popular dude. But actually he turned out to be like a huge hit. Like people really loved him.
Because like the barrier for playing that position was lessened.
Yeah, it was lessened, but you still got to do marksman things. You still got to have big impactful attacks. You still got to run around and kite people. And so off of Jhin, like, I think if there's a reasonable criticism of my designs, it's sometimes they can be kind of derivative. There's a joke that I love doing 3-hit passives.
Yeah, that's why Senna's 2.
Yeah, Senna's a 2. Yeah, she can't be a 3. Actually, I tried a 3 on her originally, but it was too many. She attacked too slow.
Actually, now that I think about it, it's like you did a bunch of 3-hit passives, and you're like, no, I can do 4. And then it's like, okay, I've done 4 and 3. What about 2?
Yeah.
Anyone? But it'll be a slow 2, so it'll feel like 3.
It'll feel like 3, exactly. And so we did the 2, and that was it. 3 just it took too many hits. Like you can feel it when you play Senna in lane. Like even with one attack in Q is not the easiest thing, and without your Q, it's like really hard to get that second attack sometimes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but then we went with the slow attacks. Basically, there was like this back and forth during development where I, for a long time, wanted her to have dual pistols because I was like, I'm going to make her feel like a carry. She's going to be like Vayne, dashing around, but she's a support, and that'll totally be fair. She used to have like a passive where she just got infinite stacking % max health damage, like just infinite stacking forever. It was
sure.
It was,
Yeah.
it was very fair,
sweet.
very balanced. Yeah. But during that time, at the start of her development, the concept artist had started drawing her with a big gun.
Yeah, and that probably just caught on.
It did, and like so, I would go to meetings and I'd be like, the big gun looks cool, but I'm really trying these dual pistols. And then the pod would look at me, the pod being like the Senna's team, and they'd be like, "What the big gun though?" and eventually I was like, "Fine, I'll try the big gun." And so like I went out and scripted like what that would feel like, which like kind of like thinking about like what a railgun might feel like, where like you have this like big wind up and then like an almost instant speed attack. And we got that in game, and like even after like the second playtest, it was like super fun and really impactful.
How soon after you committed to the big gun did you have the R? Because like when you say railgun, that's what that button is.
So the R is interesting in that, first of all, I always did think I needed a big railgun moment, and so eventually like the R is what it was.
Yeah.
So the R was always supposed to be the big railgun. Like from day one, it was called like Mega Railgun or some name like that. But originally, it wasn't actually an ultimate spellcast. It was a steroid. It just gave her 300 or 500 range. So you'd click the button, and you'd get like
it would like power up your gun.
And it would power up your gun. You'd like you'd be attacking from like 900 to 1,000 range. Like your range was insane when you had the steroid on. And like I think I gave you like 20% AD or something, so your attacks really hit.
Then eventually you just decided by 40 minutes you could do that anyway.
Yeah, and then I was just like, well, what if I just put it on the souls? There we go. But so that was always fun. But so I thought it was fun and cool, but it never got amazing feedback was the thing about the steroid. People would be like, yeah, I attack from longer range.
It was nice.
I liked attacking from longer range, but my ult though. And so the global ult, the railgun ult we have now came from two places. One was I love Ezreal W, not the current one, and not the one we deleted, but the one we shipped with.
Ezreal W. That was a line heal.
Yeah, God Laser, the line heal.
It had like a 1.0 AP ratio.
Yeah, it healed your whole team and it damaged the whole enemy team. And I always thought that was like a cool spell that like died before it really got a chance to breathe. For good reasons, right? Yeah. Like even Senna nowadays has some problems.
Well, that's the
right.
I mean, she has two spells that do this. That's
so that ends up being the Q.
Yeah.
But originally the
Q
was on the R. I tried a version of the R where she shot a big Ezreal ult.
Okay.
But it was only like 1,500 range. Yeah. And then if enemies got hit, they took damage, of course, and it healed allies. And so that was the original version. Then I switched it to like the steroid railgun thing, which people didn't really like. And then actually the reason it ended up just being this giant global was kind of silly. I was like, players like globals. When was the last global we did? And I looked, and the last true global we did was Jinx. And
who's the last? Did you go as far back as to know the last true global that wasn't designed by you?
Before Jinx, it was Draven.
We don't have that. Okay, and that was Abacussus.
Yeah, that was David Abacussus.
Yeah,
I think. Don't necessarily take that exact one at my word, but I think it was like Draven and then Jinx. And so like in terms of like global skill shots, like we hadn't done one for years.
Yeah.
And I've always felt it's just like, dude, global skill shots are so cool and players seem to really love them. Yeah. And so it just felt kind of right for Senna to be like, well, you've got this giant railgun. What if it just... Because originally I was testing with like 3,000 range, and I was just like, well, what if it just had infinite range?
3,000 versus 10,000, like what's the real difference?
Yeah, what's the big difference? And so eventually it just went the whole map.
Interesting.
And then the shielding on it came from the idea that like Senna's like has a duality concept for her. She has like shadow and light, right? Like she's like made of mist, but she also is like a light center that's like light magic. And so that's where the shield and the damage came from. It was like, okay, how do we differentiate this from other globals? Because if you look at all the other globals, there's like Ashe who stuns, which is pretty sweet, and then all the other ones are just damage. It's like Ezreal, Draven,
or they're like the
Jinx.
teleport things, which are the ones that end up getting abused like the most in pro.
Yeah,
like
or teleport.
Old TF or like Galio, and even those are half globals, like they act like globals.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's Shen, the monster.
Yeah, just takes his whole body there.
But so the idea was, it's like, well, we could differentiate this by making it not just about damage, but actually about being a fight turnaround. It's about if you hit the middle, that does damage to the opponent, but then it swings the fight for your allies as well with the shield, which of course felt really appropriate for a support champion, but then also it just felt right for her theme.
To do like, and it kind of needs to do a little bit of damage. If it was just like a debuff or something, it wouldn't feel right.
Yeah, and then also the damage gives it like a skill test where like you're still trying to hit that spell. Like Senna's ult is like the fastest global in the game by a large margin. Like it travels way faster, but like it's still missable, right? And that's because the damage is there. You'll notice I made the shield not missable.
It's not a missile though, right? It like it hits.
It is a missile. It can be blocked by Yasuo Windwall, unlike the rest of her kit.
Really?
Yeah.
So how fast is it?
Incredibly fast. It takes about a second and a half to traverse the entire map.
Okay, so if you're shooting the team fight right in front of you from like your fountain, a second and a half it would hit the other fountain.
Yeah, which you'd think, oh wow, well that's just it might as well be instant, but actually even a second and a half delay is like the difference between like you reaching top in time versus like it not getting there and your ally dying.
Yeah.
And of course, it also is worth mentioning that she has 1 second cast time on the spell.
Yes.
So
yeah, cool.
But that's where the ult came from.
Yeah, that's sweet, from the big gun. I want to talk about the line heal because you brought up the Ezreal W, and this was actually one of my like feedback points when I was doing this. Like, I'm still kind of shocked that we put a line heal back in the game, because I remember playing in Season 1 and how incredibly powerful with coordination the Ezreal line heal was, because you'd set up outside a turret, as everyone would line up, Ezreal would just shoot the W. It was also like an attack speed buff, so it had like a billion different things going on. It heal, damage, attack speed, and you would be kind of like unstoppable with these heal ball comps. You'd do like the Taric, who used to be able to press his R to have like a team wide
and it would just
AD and healing. So there was like a lot going on, but you would stack all these buffs together, and it was great. And then like, unless you were coordinated, none of that worked. So when I see this spell, I'm like, okay, you're gonna want to do this with melees so you can hit stuff through people, but also like people are just going to siege with this and shoot outside. What are your thoughts on it, like now that it's been back out in the wild for 3.5 months?
Well, I'd say there's a few things. Number one, if you look at Senna in pro play, she's quite prevalent, although she did seem fine for a bit until this Tom Kench thing came up.
Yeah, I mean, so Senna on 10-1 was 60% presence, 23 AD carry games, 0 support games, 115 and 8. This is across like the major 4 regions, which has basically been 3 because the LPL hasn't been playing.
I really appreciate that you have the Jatt stats here.
I need to give us the stat. And then it went down in 10.2 actually with no changes. Because I think a lot of people started valuing the ability to clear minion waves, right, which Senna wasn't that good at. Only 43% presence, went 11 and 19, 29 AD carries, 1 support game. But then on 10.3,
we nerfed AD carry.
You nerfed AD carry, but you upped the soul
support.
chance.
Yeah.
4 AD carry games, 5 support games, and some of those AD carry games were the ones with the melee.
With the melee
support in quotations who take CS. Only 20% presence, but went 8 and 1. And we're recording this Friday morning, so
when everybody's playing
something might happen
Senna
on 10.4. I feel like we're going to see a lot more like Senna X melee lanes, but that's still pushed on. Keep talking about your line heal.
Yeah, but so I have some thoughts about the line heal. We can start with actually just how it all started.
Okay.
The line heal comes from two very different spots, actually. Well, a few different spots. One is originally I tested a kit on Senna where she could attack allies to heal them.
Right.
Which I thought was cool as hell, but it felt like garbage. That was the problem.
Because there's like just too much to click.
Yeah, there was too much to click. Like you were an AD carry and like you accidentally clicking your allies sometimes when you didn't want to heal them. It was just like, it was really hectic and hard. And like also another thing to think about is like when you're playing AD, you're looking at your opponents, right? And a lot of times the people you need to heal are next to you. So like having that context switch is actually really difficult. And I think even Senna's to this day struggle with this on live. Well, I'll see a lot of Senna's just not heal an ally who's dying right next to them with their
because they're looking at the opponent.
Exactly. But the cool thing about that was like kind of like, oh wait, you can attack allies to heal them. And so eventually I changed that spell to be a laser that she shot with her Q, and it was an auto attack reset. And so it was like, oh, so now you don't have to do it as repeatedly. but you still have this thing attack an ally to heal it. But that still felt weird because it was still like taking up your attack slot. You were still right-clicking to do it. And so then I was like, wait a minute. I love stealing things from other champions. Wait. Her husband has a great spell that's targeted and looks very similar to what I'm doing already.
Yeah.
And so honestly, like I stole Lucian Q, and I made it longer range and do less damage
and a
but
little
heal.
slower, right?
Is
it the same speed or is it slower?
It is the same speed. It is the same speed, but it scales a little bit worse than his.
Okay.
Because Lucian's scales with game time.
Right.
Senna scales with attack speed, but Senna doesn't buy attack speed. So it's a bit different.
So if you buy attack speed, your Q casts faster on
Yes,
Senna?
it does.
Jeez. So that's why Double Blue Berserker Grease on Senna.
Maybe that's...
No, he knew.
But yeah, so basically, like the Q was, it was a like the final attempt at like, can I get attack in quotes your allies to heal them on this kid? And the end result was like, well, shoot, like Senna and Lucian can both have the same Q. That's actually a really cool link.
It's a great time.
Something I think about design that's interesting is like a lot of times when you copy something else someone does, it feels like stealing. It's like, oh, I did this cool thing and then you took it. That sucks. That's lame. It's lame that we both have this. But I find it's a lot easier to do and actually feels right when the characters are thematically connected.
Yeah.
So like if you have two snipers and they both have like really long range, those two snipers will much less often be like, but that other guy has long range. It's not fair.
Exactly.
Because they're both like, no, we're both snipers. So
Yeah.
it's okay. And so that was kind of the idea with Senna is like, well, it's actually okay to steal Lucian's Q because they're husband and wife. It would make sense that they both have like similar spells. And then of course, like they'd have slightly different functions, whereas like Senna's has longer range, but it does a lot less damage, doesn't give her Lucian passive. And then of course it heals. So,
No, I think the Senna Q feels amazing.
Yeah.
And actually playing Senna made me better at Lucian's Q.
yeah,
Like,
you can do the trick
For
shot
whatever
now.
reason with Lucian's Q, because of the range of it, when I would play Lucian, I wouldn't really think about the pass-through damage. It would more be like, oh, I'm going to use this on the target I click on, and I'm mainly using it to get my double shots. Whereas Senna was so much more about, no, I'm going to line up this minion and shoot it through, and it just doing enough reps of that, like, made me better at Lucian.
Yeah, it makes you better at Lucian. Exactly.
Which is cool.
Yeah, you play the wife, then you can play the husband. It's
Yeah,
great.
good job on that. When I get in the name ram, it feels better. One spell we haven't talked about at all is the E, which, in a lot of ways, I think it's fine if I share this. E was really hard to playtest because...
It was bugged as hell.
Yeah, exactly, because we didn't have the tech yet. Like, so many of these things rely on so many other things to be completed, and like you had the QWR in there, but then E is like, oh yeah, you don't show up on the minimap, or you don't do any of these other things. Could you kind of hack together this temp solution while the final thing was coming through? But one thing you kept saying is like, hey, this E is actually really important for the thematics of the kit.
Yes.
Talk to me about that a bit.
So yeah, so the E was very important for Senna's kit. One for thematics.
Yeah.
Basically, Senna's lore is that her story is that she's out of the lantern. Thresh killed her.
Yeah.
He imprisoned her soul, and she's back. But she's been changed, and we felt that was very important to like show is that this isn't just happy days. Senna's the same. Nothing has changed. It's like, oh, she's been tortured in a lantern hell for 7 years, and she's back, and everything's fine.
Yeah, like, did you ever see Ant-Man 2?
No, I didn't. It's like, is he just like, I'm okay now?
Yeah, it's like the wife is trapped in like the quantum universe for like 30 years. And then it's just like, let's go have a picnic, guys. Like, it's just totally fine afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. So we didn't want that. We felt it was very important that like Senna was materially changed by her experience in the lantern, but still empowered to like be a strong person and push on. And so from day one, I always knew like I wanted Wraith form. That was what I would call it in my head. It was like Wraith form. It's basically I want Senna to turn into a Mist Wraith. I want her to turn into something spooky, something from the Shadow Isles, and that's basically like to me it was the ultimate way to showcase that like Senna has changed. She's not human anymore.
So I'm actually really bad at lore. Is Mist Wraiths what is inside Thresh's lantern? Because I know like Thresh traps people in his lantern. Do they like convert into Mist Wraiths, or is it more just like a general Shadow Isles
So the
thing?
lore is in the Shadow Isles kind of like I'm not the best lore person, but it's like there's the Black Mist, which is like this nasty stuff that goes around and like there's ghosts in it, and then the ghosts will kill you. And then if you die, your soul can get trapped in the black mist and basically contorted into like a nasty, awful version of yourself.
And because Senna spent so long in the lantern, you wanted her to be able to have that power in the E.
And so it's like Senna can turn into like one of these misty, ghosty things. The catch is that she's in control. She still retains her mind, right? Like similar to how like Thresh is like a lot more in control than like some random wraith you might see.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I felt that was really important. But then also the other thing that was important is that from a design side, we think it's really important that like characters are constantly pushing the boundaries of like what you can expect in League of Legends. We want you to like, when you play with a new champion, to like have a really, if possible, not every champion has to do this, of course, but if possible, we want you to have like a really different experience, both playing as and playing against.
Right.
So like, obviously, a very extreme example of this is Yuumi, and you know that's worked out in some ways and not worked out in others. But like the one thing I'll say about Yuumi is that the game is so freaking different when she's in it.
It's true,
right? And
one thing about Yuumi is whenever I see, and this is probably this unavoidable thing, it's like you're fighting a 25% health Leesman who's got a Yuumi on his back, and you're at like full health, and then you lose, and you're like, God damn it, Yuumi,
cats!
But then like, but in my brain, I'm like, it was a 2v1. Like, my expectations, if that's a Braum or a Leona or a Janna and someone at 30% health, like, maybe I'm not as pissed, but, like, because Yumi's inside the character,
it's like
that's just like a tangent.
You're always like, maybe I could have killed the Janna instead, right?
Yeah.
JK, you can't kill Janna. But, so... But maybe a better example is even like an old champion, Nasus.
Okay.
When Nasus, because of his Q stacking mechanic, like,
he
hasn't like, he's not necessarily in the pro meta right now or anything, but like, you know, when you're a lot of players, when you're in game against a Nasus, you kind of like, there's a story there, right? It's like, oh, he's going to stack. And if he gets really stacked, he's going to slap us. And if he doesn't get really stacked, we'll be ahead, right? And like, it's like, there's that Nasus game. And so anyways, for Senna, like, she had a lot of these games already, right? She's a support marksman. That's already different. Like, that's a very different experience in the bot lane. But then we thought it's just like, on top of that, like, she still is just clicking you. Like, is there something that could really materially change your experience? And so that was one of the things that we did with the E is like, well, what if we had this team camo, right? It's like, that's really different. Like, teammates can think about that differently. Like, I had a game a few days ago where like my Riven comes bot lane and she tells me, come behind your turret. I was playing Senna. She's like, come back behind the turret and E.
Oh.
And so I did, and Riven just hops in the E with me, and then we walk out together, and the enemy bot lane just thinks that it's just Senna coming back to lane, and Riven's in there, and we kill them. And, like, that was an experience that, like, Riven, like, she actually
thought about,
communicate. We had a plan. It paid off. And obviously that doesn't work every game, right? Like, a lot of games, you never see that happen, but, like, it's like we think that's really valuable to find it on champions where we can. And so that's like the other reason for Wraith form. It's like one was thematic, but one was like, hey, could we get something really different in there and team camo?
Yeah. One thing I probably should have said to you at the start of the podcast, I've said it to you before, but like, good job on Senna. I actually really enjoy playing the character.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you enjoy her.
Yeah, it's great. And turning just a little bit to pro, I've theory crafted with you. I've theory crafted with you about the soul stuff because I mean, kind of to your point when you say you try and create champions that make the game feel unique, like that's kind of what I'm all about when I play League now because I've been playing for like 9 or 10 years and I watch pro games and all the time. So I'm constantly trying to look for like the next thing that could break. I mean, way back in 2011,
it was Trundle.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was like 2012 when you could alt Dragon and Baron and just like melt them down. But before that, it was like, no, we're going to do 2 or 3 gold per 10 items on every character and just like roam, right? Stop the other team from farming, get gold from our items and win. And then eventually those items get removed from the game because they're actually good no matter what you're doing. But like that's the type of stuff that I'm looking for. And I did a lot early on of the like support yet farming Senna because when Senna was initially released, you had to release her during this really weird time where you knew that the support items were going to be changed in preseason.
Yeah, Senna released 1 patch before preseason. So there was a 2-week period for players where they had Kleptomancy, they had the old support items,
Yeah, where you could generate like 2,500 gold from the old Frostfang.
Yep.
And you also made it an adaptive stat for that one patch just because you didn't want like the first experience to be like, oh, I have to build a stupid AP item on this 80 carry. So that was cool. But like, basically what I'm getting at is I think people are finally understanding now in 10.4 how much power is actually in a Senna Soul and how that translates through the rest of the kit. Like, if you can get 100 souls, which is actually not too unrealistic if you're playing the soul game right as like a support Senna, that's 100 AD, like 125 additional range?
Yeah, 125 additional range.
Yeah,
and
also crit chance.
75% crit chance.
Yeah, tons of stats. Like, the amount of gold you'd have to spend in the shop to get that is really high.
Yes.
So that also has this like add-on effect that, in a sense, gold on Senna is
worse.
Yeah. So not only are souls great, gold is worse because souls give you this stuff, which is why it's like, I do wonder what's going to end up happening, because I don't think Senna Tom is necessarily the only ranged melee pair you can do down bottom. I wonder how much is going to get experimented with, because like Tom Kench works for a lot of reasons. It gives you good peel since Senna is immobile, and that is like her defined weakness basically. And Tom also works because his like mid-game 1 or 2 item spike is actually really strong. Like, he runs around the map just like dueling people.
Yeah, when Tom gets like a Sunfire or a Dead Man's Plate, it's just like you can't actually beat him by yourself.
Yeah. And I'll have a question right at the end of this, but it's like, I was doing some math earlier. If we just approximate the gold of a soul at like 54, which there's a calculation that is done on Law Wiki, it's like, because you're getting 1 AD.
You get 3 gold per soul, 1 AD, you get crit, but
that
crit
AD
has to be
is worth a little bit
discounted.
more because of the way the like Absolution passive works, and also scales with their AD, but then the crit has to be discounted, and then you're also trying to factor in like 1/20th of 25 range. Anyway, let's just say 54 gold. A melee minion's 20, a range minion's 14. If you don't CS that minion, there's a 25% chance that you're getting that 54 gold soul.
Yep.
Right? So always, if an ally is there to take the CS, you should actually be giving it over to them. That was true when it was a 20% drop before you changed it.
So there's one reason where it's like, it's not necessarily strictly optimal. And I'm not saying that it's good to like, it's bad to let your allies take stuff, because Senna gets free stuff and then your allies get money. So it's like, it's a win-win. And that is, there's a number of stats in the shop that Senna can't get from a passive that she really values.
Like cooldown reduction?
Cooldown reduction, lethality, specific passives on items.
Duskblade, Umbral those
Duskblade, Umbral, exactly. So it's like, that's where I think it's like, if we just looked at raw gold, it's like, technically, if you only cared literally about quote gold of stats, you maybe should never CS on Senna ever, even if you're AD carry. But like, obviously that doesn't pan out in reality, because it's like, there are some of those stats in the item shop that you care about. So gold is valuable on you.
Yeah.
It's just,
I agree. That's why when I was doing a lot of the Senna stuff, it was very much like farm share, because I loved getting Manamune because it was such a good item, and then I loved building CDR, and then it's like the souls are there, and it's just this like massive power spike.
Yep, and then you're set, and you just let your mid lane Cassiopeia take everything. And
let your jungler take it.
Yeah.
You're like, come take the money, I'll get the souls. And you follow him around and pick up extra souls throughout the jungle.
It's sweet.
Is the drop rate on jungle monsters, do you know, is it 20% still?
It's 25, it's the same.
Oh, it's the same.
Yeah, the big difference on jungle monsters, though, is that if you kill the jungle monster yourself, you still get the guaranteed soul if it's big.
The big one, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I did that, but I took it off the cannons, but I kept it on the jungles, is that cannons, like, you can like make a more realistic choice whether or not you're CSing those things, but like sometimes you're just supposed to take red buff.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's just like sometimes, you're just supposed to have it on your character. And so, plus like the gold value of big jungle monsters is very variant, where it's like, oh well, red's worth 100, but like Gromp's only worth 40 or something. Not Gromp, like one of the Krugs. So it's like, so kept it on the jungle monsters just because like those are things that like more often you're just supposed to take, like, if you can. Yeah.
The question I'd eventually get to is the whole tuning of what a soul should give you and what gold means to Senna. I think one team that oftentimes doesn't get enough credit and ends up just getting like lumped in with the memes is the Playtest team.
Oh,
like,
yes.
They talk to me a little bit about like how they helped you decide on how good a soul is, and like how, because you've changed the soul drop rates, but like the power of a soul has been unchanged since release.
Yeah, and honestly, it's been unchanged for a very long time in development too.
Yeah.
I mean, back when you worked on her, there was like crit damage on there and stuff. But eventually we settled on crit chance, AD, and range. And the main thing we actually iterated on with Playtest team was the range. Souls, breakpoints, they give 25 range right now. I think they used to give 40 at one point, which was it's
like a strange breakpoint.
A lot of range.
Because all other range breakpoints in League are in factors of 25.
Yeah, but yeah, it was a lot. You get like 200, and yeah, it was crazy. You could outrange towers very early, which I thought was sweet.
Sure, but others told you that wasn't so sweet.
But what Playtest helped me do is one of the big things they identified very early is whoa, AD carry Senna is just better.
Yeah,
just straight better. And remember, we want Senna to be viable as a support. So if AD carry Senna is too much stronger than support Senna, we have to nerf it, which means support Senna gets nerfed, which means support Senna is bad. So like as an example, like we've seen Soraka suffer for this a bit, where it's because top lane Soraka was so much better than bot lane Soraka, we had to like nerf them both, and now they both feel pretty weak.
And like there's a very real reason you have to do that, but you're trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
Like
we're trying to avoid that.
A lot of things you did with Senna is like you're trying to have your cake and eat it too, and in a lot of places you were successful, and in some places you needed to make some tweaks after the fact.
Exactly. And so with Playtest, they were like, AD carry Senna is better. And at the time, back in testing, it was like, she's like 8% better.
Yeah.
It was like, she's insane. It's like, you should run her every game, and support Senna is going to have to be balanced around this. And originally, actually, what we were planning on doing is just making support Senna only build AP. We were like, support Senna is an AP champion. She specs into healing, and AD Senna is an AD Senna.
And you can just balance it with ratios.
And we balanced it with ratios. We ended up not going that route, though, because one of our design leads very reasonably said, you're making a support AD carry. If I can't buy AD as a support AD carry, then what's the point? Like, come on.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean she shouldn't be able to be IAP. Like right now, like Athene's is a very real part of support Senna's build.
Agreed. I think it should be part of a marksman Senna's build, but that requires a different team comp. And that's like a separate conversation.
Yeah, but it's like, so it's like, it's cool that she has AP items, but we did want her to be able to build some AD items because like that's just like, that's who the character is.
Yeah.
So we had to find other ways to make souls, to make it balanced. And so the idea that we eventually settled on, sorry, I keep tapping things.
It's fine.
The idea we eventually settled on was very simply support Senna gets more souls.
Yeah.
Which is why there's the significantly reduced chance to get a soul on something you kill.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have exhausted that tuning lever in that there's not really much lower I can go in terms of how many souls AD carry Senna is getting.
It's 1.67
on everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could put it to 0, but at that point, it's like...
I want the lever just in case some crazy world in the future where AD carry Senna is too weak, then we could buff it by just increasing soul drops.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's what the idea is, that support Senna gets more souls. Although now we're seeing something that's potentially dangerous. We don't know yet. It's just come up. We'll have to observe it, which is like the Senna tank thing.
Yeah, you said you had mixed feelings on that, and I promised we'd get to it towards the end of the podcast. So what is your dilemma here with Senna plus melee?
So honestly, it's a thing of like, there's two dangers of it. One is that melee champions tend to invalidate Senna's weaknesses if she lanes with one. And that's one of the reasons that AD carry Senna was historically better than support Senna.
Because she could actually lane with the Leona.
It was just like, you just have a Leona.
Braum.
Yeah. Whereas like if you have a 2 AD carry lane, that lane has a lot of vulnerabilities. Like a lot.
Yeah.
Which was intended.
Yeah.
And so suddenly, okay, well, you've got a melee champion now, and now you're supporting a melee champion, and a lot of those vulnerabilities you had have disappeared again. So that's just a little scary. Doesn't mean you can't balance it, though. And then the other thing that's just scary is like, it's new. Yeah. And I think players reasonably criticize us sometimes for like killing new things, but sometimes new things are top lane Soraka.
Yeah, and also like the top lane Soraka thing, she was also like a 59% win rate in solo queues, so it violated so many of the pre-existing rules of balance, on top of also being like top lane Soraka, which is annoying to play against.
And so the danger of Senna supporting a melee champion, because I think the thing that's really interesting, right, is it's not like she's like CSing a lot. She'll like take a few minions here and there.
Yeah.
Like that melee champion is actually getting farmed. That melee champion will actually out CS its opponent sometimes. So it's not like it's like this like weird gold funneling thing that like Sona Tahm Kench used to do, where it's like they'd both share the farm for half the game. It's like actually no, it's like Senna's not farming. She's literally just playing support.
Yeah.
And then she's supporting a melee. But yeah, it's scary though, because we haven't tuned bot lane around that. A lot of bot lanes aren't set up to deal with that. A lot of bot lanes aren't set up to deal with like a fed melee carry down there or a fed melee tank coming from the bot lane.
Yeah.
On the flip side though, I have always been of the opinion that like I think it's really cool when bot lane is opened up, meaning that like more things than just AD carries can run down there. So if I see this, when I see this, I'm like, wait, okay, so you're supporting Tahm Kench now, but does that mean she could support a Galio? Does that mean she could support a Poppy or an Ornn?
I mean, we've already seen...
Or a Yasuo? Probably not a Yasuo.
We've seen in NA Academy and also in like certain high challenger games, the pairings that Senna has shown up with has been... Tahm Kench is the one in pro for sure. Galio, Ornn, and then there's like the Morgana one, which we haven't seen pop up yet. And
so she's supporting a mage, basically.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same type of like melee synergy where you're healing your melee and damaging the other one. But like Morgana's one of those ranged yet peely supports. That's why she's kind of able to exist in that pro ecosystem. The really spicy one, and I agree with you in the fact that like it is exciting when you're getting more diversity in that sense. I'm wondering if it's like, can you do Yasuo? Can you do Aurelia?
That's what I've been curious about, right? It's like, how does this evolve? Because it's like, wait, if Senna is like strong enough to create space, although I'd argue possibly one of the reasons you're not seeing like a Yasuo is that Tahm Kench is like the epitome of this, but it's like, oh, well, the reason Senna support works is because she can harass them, but she can only harass them when she has like a big beefy melee friend like staring at the enemy being like, if you dare approach us, I will beat the heck out of you.
Yeah.
And like Tahm Kench is like the ultimate like, you can't even touch Senna, I'll just eat her.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I'm curious to see how it develops, because I think it's really exciting if like we start seeing it's like, oh, I'm in solo queue and I see my support lock in Senna, or heck, even my AD carry player lock in Senna.
Now I can play something different.
And then I could maybe play something different. Maybe players want to do that. There's also this thing that's like, maybe players don't want to do that, right? Like maybe players are like, oh no, I have to play Tahm Kench. It's like, but we'll see how it develops.
Yeah.
If it ends up being overpowered, like I noticed right now that like it seems pick ban currently in pro.
It's getting there. I mean, we've seen like a few games on 10-4.
Yeah. But if it ends up being overpowered, my expectation is the two things we'd look at. And again, I'm not on the balance team, so like it is up to their discretion.
Yeah, at this
to do
point,
this.
You're like a Senna consultant.
Yeah, I'm a consultant. Yeah. So, but I would imagine we would either just look at how much damage Senna gets from souls. We've been talking about souls. It's very possible that Senna just gets too much from souls. And so we could do something like, say, souls give a bit less AD, and then we added like a soul ratio to the Q heal. So it's like, oh, actually support Senna doesn't even get nerfed that much, but she's just not carrying as hard.
So you're going to lack damage if you're on Senna Tahm Kench, and it just won't work as well.
Yeah, exactly. That could be a way to do it. And the other thing is just like, another thing I'm just curious about, because what I've been seeing is like, I've actually been, I wonder, again, I don't know, if it's just Senna Tahm Kench that's the problem.
Yeah.
And if that's the problem, I just really, obviously I'm biased because I made Senna.
Hey, look at that Tahm Kench guy.
I'm obviously biased because I made Senna, but like we saw this with Sona Tahm Kench too. Like it was like, actually there was Sona Taric as well.
Yeah, I think Senna Taric,
like,
I ran that as well. It's sweet.
But I'm just wondering, it's like, is this actually a Tahm Kench problem of just the classic pro problem Tahm Kench of like, take Tahm Kench with this character, you have invalidated every single one of that character's possible weaknesses because of what Tahm Kench's W does. And so I just have another question of like, do we need to be looking at Tahm Kench?
Yeah, I mean, but I think there's a weird thing going on with Tahm Kench right now where there is a lot of power in just his dueling. Like, he's a strong bully kill threat who is like a lane bully.
Especially when you get gold on him.
Yeah, so, and that doesn't mean that he can't do the eat thing, but he's like, that champ is so weirdly pro skewed, even though you think of like his actual button presses are pretty simple.
But honestly, like if you're telling me like, oh, the reason this is powerful is because Tahm Kench is a bully, I'm like actually really excited about that. It's like, oh wait, we're like enabling
he's a bully, but also
champions.
He has that protection button.
Yeah, and the protection button is what I would be scared about.
Yeah, this has been really cool. Thank you for doing this. I do want to get some thoughts that I have written down here of like, what has surprised you? Senna's been out for 3.5 months now on the live servers. You spend so long thinking about all these different things of how this kit's going to work and how people are going to play it and the fantasies you're trying to deliver on. Has there been something in the 3.5 months that like surprised you that you're happy about?
Yeah, there's a few things. One thing that I was surprised about is actually how well both lethality and AP items work on Senna. Because if you look at, sorry, when I say AP items, I actually mean the enchanter items.
You mean Ardent Censer Athenes?
Yeah, like healing enchanter items. One thing you think about when you look at those items is that they're kind of multiplicative off each other. It's like lethality means you should get more lethality. Healing increases mean you should get more healing increases, especially with Athenes being like, hey, I give you AP for mana regen. And so like the crazy thing to me about Senna is like a viable build on her is just Umbral Glaive plus Athenes.
Yeah.
Like you just can have them both and they work. And so, like, obviously, like, I was trying to make that a reality and, like, with the help of Playtest team to, like, really figure that out. But, like, I'm actually surprised that it worked as well as it did.
It's a good point.
And so it's something I'm really happy about. Another thing that surprised me about her is just how like, willing people actually are to play her as an AD carry. You know, she's very supportive, right? And maybe it's just because she's strong. Like, let's be real, she's strong.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of feedback during development that, like, this character is a support. Unless she's OP, no one's going to play her as an AD carry. And again, maybe she's just still strong. But it's like you're going to have a hard time getting people to play her as both. And that's what I wanted. I wanted, like, a character who was, like, 60% support play rate, 40% AD play rate. And guess what? In solo queue, it's about that. It's about 60-40. And so I'm really surprised that people were willing to pick her up on both roles.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times what we see players do is they actually bandwagon onto like one perceived strong role. And then basically they're like, this is the strong role. You should never play the other one. And then they just like, and then just no one does. Like, I think Pyke is like that right now where it's like, his mid lane is actually really good.
Yeah.
But no one plays him there. No one wants to play him there. No one thinks it's strong. Well, some people do, and they abuse it.
Yeah, and then there's like the challenger guy who's running around as Pyke mid, but just because it hasn't been in pro and exposed to 300,000 people at once, it just like doesn't catch on.
Yeah, and so like with Senna, like when she showed up in pro, that you mentioned that one patch where she was like 24 AD carry games or something.
Yeah,
right? No support.
all AD carry. That probably just shot up her AD carry play rate.
Shot up her AD carry play rate, but I was terrified. I was like, wait, that means no one's gonna play her support anymore. They're all just gonna transition over. But that actually didn't happen. What actually happened was people just played her more as AD carry and they kept playing her as support. And so anyways, I was just really happy about that because like I was really worried that like people would choose one role for her and refuse to touch her in the other once they determined which one was the best. And that doesn't seem to have happened. So good job, League community. I'm proud of you.
Sweet. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up, August? Just free time for something?
Free time for something? So if you're a Senna player and you play support, I highly encourage you to consider some games building Black Cleaver.
I've been preaching this as well.
It's not an every game thing, gonna be real here.
Because the build path is a little ugly.
The build path is ugly, and it's if you're building it, you're cutting your damage. But the thing about Black Cleaver Senna is that you stack Black Cleaver twice as fast. You get two stacks on your Q and all your autos, and so if you're against a team that has a lot of burst damage, it's got a lot of health, so you won't die. And if your team has a lot of physical damage, like it's like, oh, I've got like a Caitlyn and a Yi in the jungle and a Yasuo mid, it's like, if you build a Black Cleaver for that team, you're not going to die. You're not going to be the hard carry. I'm going to be real here. You're going to be more supportive, but you're going to shred for your team. You're not going to die, and it gives you 20% CDR.
And the CDR is the big thing. These lethality items, you're spending 2,600 gold on, maybe 10% CDR. Black Cleaver going to give you 20.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's the one thing I'd maybe cap it off with is just like Senna's item builds are a bit more open than you might expect situationally. Obviously, it's not an every game thing. Most games just go Umbral Glaive. But it's like just be thinking about what's in the game because like Black Cleaver is actually a decent item on her we've seen. And then also in terms of runes, it's like generally you want to go Glacial. Glacial is usually the best, but Summon Airy and Dark Harvest are actually still quite good on a support Senna depending on matchup, depending on what you're trying to do. Yeah. So just remember, don't always get locked into one build. You can increase your win percentages by being more versatile with the item shop.
My tip would be mindful of where your jungle is. because just moving into the raptor pit a little bit as he kills him, and those 3 or 4 souls just sit down.
That's free money.
It's so much.
It's 200 gold.
If there's 4 souls. Krugs can drop 5 souls if you get a little bit lucky. So don't like sack a whole wave for it. I did some limit testing early on with Senna. I don't know if I told you about this, but I tried just full clearing with my jungler the whole time. And I'd come out with like 12 or 13 souls, but I'd be like level 1 in this lane of level 3 people.
And your 80 carry would be like, what are you doing?
Where are you, dude?
Where are you?
So don't do that. But in like the mid game, if you can go around, it's oh man, it's so many souls.
Yep.
That's my pro tip. Anyway, August, thank you for joining me. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, thanks for having me. If you ever want to talk about any other champions, either upcoming or in the past,
yeah, like
I'm
a
down.
Jinx or an R. For fans out there, if you're listening to this on YouTube, that's great. You can also listen on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud. Just search JLXP on those platforms, and we got to do this again sometime. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.